Welcome to Dingsco FM's podcast, where we discuss personal, academic, career, entrepreneur, and business growth with guests who are an expert in their field. In today's episode, we'll focus on personal and business growth, and we'll look at the legal issues faced by individuals, families, and business owners, and the impact that these legal issues have. We'll also look at how we can better prepare ourselves for potential legal issues and what to expect in terms of different legal processes. On that note, we welcome Carol Speirs as our guest. Carol is an admitted attorney who completed her Bachelor of Law or BA-LLB degree at the University of Cape Town in 2008. In 2012, she became the co-founder and director of SP Attorneys, a law firm practicing civil and criminal litigation that includes commercial and family matters. Carol heads up the commercial, civil litigation, and family law department in the firm. In 2021, Carol celebrated 10 years since being admitted as an attorney and 12 years since being in business. On this anniversary, she shared these top 5 lessons that she learned on her journey, and it's wisdom that we could all benefit from. Number 1, trust your inner voice. It's usually spot on. Number 2, don't sweat the small stuff. Just do the best that you can with the time that you have. Number 3, don't take no for an answer. Ask a different question. Number 4, write what you would like to say and then cut it in half. And number 5, sometimes you just need to laugh, put on some good music, and keep going. Carol's accomplishments aren't restricted to her career journey. When she's not changing lives and businesses through her work, you'll find Carol traveling and exploring, spending time with her fiancé Justin, and she's currently planning her wedding. She's a former hip-hop dancer who competed at national level, and because of her love for the great outdoors, she hiked the Grand Canyon and Fish River Canyon. She even keeps active on her holidays abroad to the extent that she's completed running marathons in both Dublin and Berlin. Welcome to the show, Carol.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
Carol, you've had quite an extensive journey, so please tell us about your study and career journey. What actually led to you becoming an attorney?
So going right back to the beginning, my parents were quite strict. My dad was Scottish and my mom's Danish, and they were very anti-television. So on Monday nights, as we all know, those were the 3 hours that you could watch TV. And my father would sit me down in front of Ally McBeal, and that just turned on all my legal lights. I just looked at that and I thought, oh, this is what I want to do. And as we would go through the program, he would, laugh at me and say, what would you have done? If you had little baby standing next to you in a corner dancing, what would you do? So there I was thinking that that would be my legal career with all these magical fairies next to me. When I started, then that's what I thought it was going to be like. And I started at UCT. And I loved history at school, so I did a bit of BA, LLB, which kept a bit of sanity between the dryness of the law and the, history is so rich and everything. So I became a very fast speed reader to get through all the things I had to read. Yeah, and it's been such a journey since then. I did my articles at a small firm in Sea Point, and then after that, I decided I could do this on my own, and I started, and now I've got 3 employees with me. And yeah, every day is a new adventure and we just have fun. We try and do our best and have happy clients and do it in a positive way.
And it sounds like such an amazing journey, Carol. And you've obviously gained a lot of experience between being at a law firm that you said you started at in Sea Point and having worked there, and then, of course, having started your own company. So in your experience, what are some of the common legal issues that individuals and families face, and how do these issues impact your clients?
So from an individual point of view, we have a lot of issues, obviously, in life, but we primarily deal with a lot of tenant and landlord disputes, employment issues, contractual issues. You bought a car, now there's a problem with it. Now what do you do? Who are you suing? What's happening? And often, these things come down to timing. We had one client that had a friend move into her garden, and she had a beautiful property and she was on the brink of selling. So it wasn't the best time, but she thought, no, let's give these guys a bit of a help. And they came and moved in for 6 months. And after the 6 months, she just thought, oh no, this is someone who's experienced in litigation. And they just dug their heels in and refused to leave. And she was in such a state because she just said, how do I do this now? My property's been sold. The poor buyer's trying to get this property. And it just became a complete mess. And in we came and we just managed to sort it out. If the stars sort of aligned, there wasn't COVID closing the courts. We managed to get in there. We managed to get heard. And there's a principle in our law that they had brought up. They tried to rescind the judgment that she had obtained, and they took more than a year to do so. And by doing that, that disposed of the matter in one quick swoop. But it was so interesting that she had been dealing with quite a few previous attorneys, and it just had been a complete mess. But then luckily we were able to sort everything out for her. Law can help you solve a lot of problems. I know we have quite a bad reputation, but actually at the end of the day, you're trying to help get a solution out of their problems. And that's what we managed to do with that one. And then for families, we do obviously a lot of divorces. And at the moment, actually, there's been a lot of people that have been divorced, and in their divorce agreement, they have, joint decision makings to make with the children and everything. And at the time of a divorce, it's often very acrimonious, and there's a lot of obviously feelings and hurt. And so there's a lot of using the children against each other and saying, I want this and I want that. But then as the years go on, this sort of high stress environment sort of dissipates, because obviously one of you maybe starts dating someone else, and the children get older, they don't need you as much. And then you're stuck in a situation where your divorce order says very categorically what's going to happen. And maybe one parent either doesn't really mind that much, or they move overseas, or they do lots of things. So at the moment, we've actually got a lot of that sort of thing where you go to the High Court and you say, look, this poor mother wants to just make her decisions, and the father's either disappeared or he's, in another relationship. And why must I be stuck on this specific reading of our divorce? So then we get the court to change that and let the poor mother make decisions when this father is absconded or whichever way. So we've had a lot of that with family issues. And obviously estates, at the moment, the master's office is in complete shambles. To try and guide you through that process, who to speak to, what to do. Obviously, everyone knows it takes a long time to resolve it, but it shouldn't. There's steps that should be followed, but there's just things falling through the cracks. But that's what we're here for, lawyers, to try and seal those cracks as best we can.
Wow, those are a lot of processes on the individual and family side that you've obviously worked with, Carol. So on the other side of it, again, in your experience that you've had, what are some of the common legal issues that business owners face, and what are the impact of those issues on your clients?
So we act for a lot of businesses. We have quite a few landlords, commercial tenancies, and you're dealing with tenants not paying, and you're trying to get the money and figure out if you need to eject them if they haven't paid. And then you have obviously drafting of contracts for businesses. A lot of people come to us and they've been in practice for several years and they just don't have basic contracts, which just makes their life so difficult. We had one client that did a lot of computer work for different entities, and they would go in there and they had their own small protocols, but they didn't have big contracts to say, sign this and we know what will happen if you don't pay, or if your computer blows up, who's at fault. And, so we'd help them a lot with doing employment contracts, and then as they go, then they'll write to us and say, okay, well, we've got this issue. Can you explain how this contract would now apply? So we have a lot of those sort of business issues. And then my favorite is when a business has just started out and they're wanting to know what to do. And that's actually the best time for businesses to come to an attorney. It sounds counterintuitive. You have no money and you're just trying to find an office space at the beginning and you're panicking. But at that point, I'd highly recommend going to just an attorney for half an hour just to say, look, this is my business. This is what I want to do. What meetings do I need to hold? What minutes do I need to have? There are 4 shareholders, the one we can't stand. What do we do? There's things that you can do in the very early stages that can make your business much more profitable, to just do away with all the riffraff and focus on what you really want to do, and let the lawyers and accountants deal with the background issues. That's always fun when you can advise them. And then you see them grow and they'll email you in 3 years' time and say, yeah, these contracts are working, but now I've got this issue. What do I do? And then you insert a clause in. So it's a growing thing, which is really exciting. So you grow next to each other.
That's so awesome to hear, Carol. And I'm glad that you actually touched on that, with businesses putting things in place before they've even started and officially gone into trading or doing business. In that light, how further can individuals and business owners better prepare themselves for potential legal issues? What are some of the other things that they should have in place?
So, the best way to start is to look at the Companies Act. It covers a lot of these sort of issues, but it is legalese. So I would strongly recommend seeing an accountant from day one, getting your invoices in order, potentially using, there's so many platforms now, such as QuickBooks and everything. It can make things so much easier. We don't need to be reinventing the wheel every time. and just to reach out to people that have the experience. And I know obviously it's always a money issue in the beginning, but to just say, look, I just want 10 minutes. I mean, it's not going to cost a lot to speak to an accountant or an attorney or whatever, just a little bit. And then just get your little processes in order. And yes, have employment contracts so that your employees know what's going on. With all these COVID regulations that came out, I was in hard lockdown, and that was all I spoke about day in, day out, reading these new regulations. What do we have to do? So everyone I know is sick of regulations, but if you get these things done in the beginning, it's so much easier further down the line.
And then from an individual perspective, Carol, you mentioned estates earlier. Are things like wills a very good idea to have in place to avoid potential legal issues?
Yes, absolutely. A will is gold, and we draft them very cheaply. So if anyone needs a will, we can do it for 500 Rand. It's not something that's going to break the bank, and it will save you hours of sitting at the masters trying to figure out what's going on, and money going into the guardian's fund instead of in potentially a trust for your kids, and just general estate planning. So even if, like we're saying, if you're rushing and you're starting your business or you're in the middle of a divorce, you don't really want to be dealing with, okay, what happens if I suddenly pass away in one of these processes? So if you have a will in place, then that's at least covered. You know what's going to happen. And as your life goes, then you can just amend and do it yourself. I mean, maybe spend the money in the beginning, get the will drafted, and then, maybe you change heirs, you change executors, you marry, you divorce, and you just go as you go. So that's a very good idea, because passing away without a will can be problematic in its own right, and then your heirs don't know what's going on, and it's stressful enough as it is.
When it comes to the law, we don't always know what to expect in terms of how long it takes to finalize a legal process. And the one example is, of course, winding up estates, as you mentioned. So can you please provide us with some guidance around timeframes for some of the common legal processes, whether it's the individual and family processes or the business processes?
Yes, absolutely. So we have a two-prong approach in our law. You have what's called applications, where court and your attorney will argue it on the affidavits that you and your opposition has filed. And then the court will hear the argument, and then they'll make a decision. And that's a bit of a faster process because you get a court date and it's all argued just between the lawyers and the magistrate or judge or whoever's hearing it. But then the second process is what's called an action process. And so something like a divorce, or if you need, you're claiming money from a creditor who hasn't, or a debtor that hasn't paid you, then it's an action process, and then that's a lot longer. Then that can take, up to a year, whereas an application, you're looking at a few months. An action, then suddenly you've got lots of paperwork to do, and then you've got to come into the stand and give evidence. It's just a lengthy process. And at the moment, even just getting to the point of what's called once all the documents are filed, we get to a pre-trial stage. And that's just for the court to show all the documents are filed, you've got everything in order, you've got your evidence, and now we'll give you a trial so that you can bring your clients and you can fight on yours and go forth with what you see on TV, I suppose. But then even to get that pre-trial stage, we're sitting at about 2 years to get there. So when you think, like I thought of Adam McBeal, suddenly they're plan A, plan B, and they're in court. It's so different in the real world. And it's so unfortunate because, our systems are just, not very good for the public, because they can see that and they think, oh my word, okay, I can do this for a few months. I can't do this for 4 years. So that's a lot of what I struggle with as well, that you say to people, yes, you've got this claim, you can do this, but it's a massive investment for you to do. So you've always got to think of the pluses and the minuses, and you've got to really get to a point where you're in a really good relationship with your attorney, that you can withstand the timing and not feel like you're getting ripped off for years. Obviously, if there's an urgent matter, you can run to court, you can get an urgent judge very quickly. But it's just when you're talking about X owes Y 10 Rand, you can do it on application, which could take a few months. Or if it's more tricky, it'll take a few years, which is not great.
Do you have an example of a case that took quite an extensive amount of time? So what's your longest case that you've dealt with?
Yes, so my longest was 7 years, and that was just a neighbor, the two neighbors fighting with each other over a tiny, tiny piece of land in the back that they both used. And you think that it's so simple and it's just on the title deed, but no, there was just fighting, and every trick in the book was utilized. The defendants jumped from attorney to attorney to attorney, and then at one point we were getting so close and the trial was set down finally to be heard, and then they sold the property to someone else. When you have someone who actually knows what they're doing, this is why attorneys are out there, that you can deal with those issues and you can just okay, this is a new aspect. Let's go. And eventually we won completely. We got that whole piece of land and we got all our costs for the whole 7 years. So there are things that really end up working. You just have to trust the process. And my poor client had to trust me. I think at year 4, she was like, oh, I don't know. But at year 7, we did it.
So, Carol, through this conversation, you showed us how intricate law can be and how many legal issues we could potentially get wrapped up in as citizens. And there may be a listener who's currently facing a difficult situation and they'd want to get in touch with you to get some legal advice, have an initial consultation with you. So, how and where can they reach you or SP attorneys?
Yes, they can reach us telephonically on 021 422 1120. Or we have our emails, Carol at S for sugar, B for brown, -attorneys with an s.co.za. And then we also have a website, www.sbattorneys.co.za. We've also got that dash, sb-attorneys. Yeah, and give me a call. We offer a free initial consultation because I find in the beginning people don't really know what to say to an attorney. So there's a lot of, I don't know. So I just have a half an hour. We just say, okay, what's generally happening? And then you can pick, these are the issues. This is where we need to go further. This is where I need more documents. And then we charge from there. And obviously very open with our fees structure. And we're just trying to do this the best we can in a very holistic way that helps people.
So thank you so much for being our guest today and sharing such sound advice, Carol. It's been wonderful to have you here. As you've shown us, the legal system can be complicated for those of us who don't work with it daily, and you've managed to show us so much clarity and direction on how we can handle some of the common legal issues out there. I'm very excited to have you join me again in future to catch up on your personal journey so that we find out how many more marathons you've run and as well as your business journey.
Well, fantastic. No, thank you so much for having me. And to all the listeners out there, I just think if you have an idea and you want to go for it, if you can dream it, you can do it. And there's people out there to help you. So have your idea, see the people that you need to, an accountant, an attorney, anyone else, and then get cracking.
We hope that you enjoyed today's podcast episode. Be sure to come back regularly for more great content that focuses on personal, career, entrepreneur, and business growth. Find out more about our coaching services and get in touch with our team by following the link in our post or visit dingscoconsulting.co.za.